And now I have the great pleasure to introduce Chris Matthews. Matthews is the host of Hardball on MSNBC and the Chris Matthews Show on NBC. He has distinguished himself as a broadcast journalist, newspaper bureau chief, presidential speechwriter, and best-selling author. Matthews has split his career between politics and journalism. He worked for 15 years as Washington bureau chief and national columnist for the San Francisco Examiner and the San Francisco Chronicle. He created Hardball in 1997 and the Chris Matthews Show in 2002. He worked in the U.S. Senate for Senator Frank Moss of Utah and Senator Edmund Muskie of Maine, in the White House under President Jimmy Carter as a presidential speechwriter, and as the top aide to Speaker of the House, Tip O'Neill. A graduate of the College of the Holy Cross, another Jesuit institution, Matthews did graduate work at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. He also served for 2 years with the U.S. Peace Corps in Swaziland, Africa. He is the author of 7 best-selling books, the latest titled Jack Kennedy, Elusive Hero. He is currently writing another book on 2 people who really did make politics work, Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill. And he is married to Kathleen Matthews, who is Executive Vice President of Marriott International. Please join me in welcoming Chris Matthews.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It's very nice. Thank you. Very nice.
Well, thank you all for coming out. And Father George, thank you. Jim Zogby, General, thank you. Anybody I miss? Anyway, thank you to the Tanous family. It's a great opportunity to come here. I didn't get paid, but that's right. Thank you, and congratulations on going to Georgetown. I know it's not Worcester, but it's pretty good, you know? Location. It's great to go. It's a great school. Anyway, we'll get into that later. That'll be part of my debate. I know the election. How many people here are going to vote? How many for Obama? How many for Romney? God, you guys are great. I love you. I was at the Al Smith dinner in New York. I think the richer the Irish get, the worse they get. Anyway, yeah, they get terrible. They get terrible. Anyway, talk about bourgeois. Anyway, it's great to be here. And I want to talk about, well, the election's 12 days from now. I'm not going to change anybody's mind, or in his mind, I don't even want to. Rachel Maddow, by the way, is great to work with. She's a real star, and I'm going to be on with her election night. We'll be on we'll be on the night before, then we'll be that night, and we work like till 2 in the morning. And then they always have me do an extra show at the end. I do the late show, which is great fun to do. And I hope we do pick the right person for president this time. I really do hope the country gets it right. And I want to talk about tonight, though, about what I'm writing on my new book, and I'm working very hard on it. I think people think I'm crazy because I do 6 shows a week and I work on books when I'm not doing that. And it's the only way I can keep doing it, just keep going crazy every night working on it. I got these huge binders not of women. I love the way, it wasn't that if he had said binders of resumes of women, it'd be okay. But binders, they got the bondage thing going there. It's just very strange of human bondage. Anyway. Anyway, so I'm working on this. I wanted to give you a preview of it tonight, and because I think it's a heck of a story about how this city, because the great thing about this city, there's a wonderful story I came across working on an earlier book about 2 guys on horseback in 1791 in the heat of summer. I think it was June. And one was the guy who had just won the war for us against the British Empire. That was General Washington, who gave his name to this city. And then, you like my wife? I make a little mistake and you jump on it? There'll be more. And they were looking down over a place called Jenkins Hill. There used to be a bar up there called Jenkins Hill. It was the name of the hill before it was Capitol Hill. And all there was a big swamp. You know, Georgetown was here, but there was a swamp. That's all there was. And the guys were, it's like a scene out of The Producers. And these 2 guys, like Nathan Lane, you know, and Matthew Broderick, thinking out how we're going to build a capitol down here for the whole country. And there wasn't even a country yet. It was just a few seaboard colonies, former colonies. And they said, we're going to build this huge capitol. It's going to have a big carriageway down this way, Pennsylvania Avenue. It's going to be the executive mansion down there. And this hill is a perfect pedestal to put a capitol on. These guys were dreamers, you know. And then we had, but if you think that's an amazing thing, to build a capitol for a whole nation that didn't exist yet, a continental power, a world power, imagine the imagination of the guys in Philadelphia who were sitting around thinking, how about a country that governs itself? How about you elect their representatives? It's never been done before. I mean, it's unimaginable. We're going to do something. There's always been monarchies before that. And we're going to have a country that governs itself through its representatives. And they're going to meet together like we did here in Philadelphia to do the Declaration and the Constitution. We're going to do this together. They're going to come from different parts together. They're going to ride horses. By the way, you had to be pretty tough to be a politician in those days. You had to go across some pretty bad roads. I mean, worse than some of them today even, you know. And you had to get to what you had to get. If you couldn't ride a horse, you weren't going to be in politics. You weren't going to be a congressman. Imagine heading down from Massachusetts. Oh, I got to get down to Washington. I got to ride my horse down there. I got to ride my horse to frickin' Washington tonight. And it's scary out there. So you had to be a certain kind of person to be a congressman or a senator in those days. And then you got there, there's the tavern, you had a few drinks, and you found a place to stay. I mean, it was pretty rough here. But it worked. You know, we argued the Civil War, we argued the civil rights, we argued slavery, we argued women's rights, I always tell people, if you're liberal, just wait your turn, because the liberals always end up winning the arguments. It takes a while. It takes a while. If it's gay rights or it's women's rights it always ends up, because eventually it just goes that way in our society. The arguments, it takes a while, it should take a while because we get it right then. But I think it's what our society's been about, because you never want to be in a position of denying someone their rights. You're never the good guy. So, and the other president came along, of course, was Lincoln, who held this society together. And I always think to people, it used to be a great date for me when I was single. I'd take the date down to Lincoln Memorial late at night. And I'd go always to the back of the Lincoln Memorial, and I'd say, look at this, because you can see all the way to the Kennedy grave here, which I always like to see at night when I go home at night from some social thing Kathy and I got. I love to see the little twinkle there at the light. And you look across, you see where Robert E. Lee lived, the guy who chose to be loyal to Virginia rather than the country, and he was fighting. And then if you were Lincoln, you were looking out across Alexandria to the rebel flag, the Confederate flag across the river. I mean, it was so close, that war. And this guy had to hold us together. So we had one president who imagined us and one guy who held us together. And then we had Roosevelt, who came to town in the 30s and built basically Washington, the Federal Triangle, the whole thing. And, you know, but my theory about it all is it's so practical. The statues that I love in this town, I love the monuments. I love the, you know, the buffalo heads and the lion heads, the nice parts of town, around the zoo, you know, around Q Street. I love all that in Washington when they really did design the city beautifully. But they're not going to make our society or our government work. Even the beautiful Capitol building's not going to make it work, or the White House, or the design of the city. And they're inanimate objects. It's the people that come here that have to make it work. And it's never going to stay there. I've been to Latin American republics when they had coup leaders taken over and the military's run the country, or left wing or right wing. They still have the Capitol buildings. They just don't mean anything. They just don't mean anything. So buildings aren't going to make it, and rarely we don't do nation building very well, let's be honest. We're not going to make Afghanistan into something it doesn't want to be. It took the British 200 years to sell democracy to India. And the British are very different than us. They go there and they want to stay there. We generally want to go home as fast as we can and watch movies till we do get home. We're different. I was in the Peace Corps. I know how it's different. They put on theater. We say, where's the movie? And when am I going home? But the country we built here is all about the kinds of people we sent here. And if you detect an ideology in this, feel free. But I think it's the American ideology. And the older I get, the more I believe in the system. I just want it to work. I just want the right and the left to get together and negotiate and compromise and find a way to make this thing work and stop kicking so many cans down the road. We got the Middle East peace process. I swear you kids are 20 now. You'll be 50 years from now. Well, the Middle East peace process, how's it going? Well, maybe it will be going. Maybe it will have achieved a two-state solution or something that works. We have immigration. It doesn't seem hard to me to solve the immigration thing. Paper it. Give everybody paper. Everything's on the books. Nothing under the table anymore. Everything is honest. Let's start with that theory. Everybody's here's your paper. You're here. Let's move on. Let's get it straight. And I think that some of these problems could be solved. But I want to talk about two guys, very different guys. One was a guy who was pushing 70. The other guy was pushing 300 pounds. Okay? One guy was a Hollywood guy. Another guy never went to the movies. Never went to the movies. And I'll tell you some stories about that. One guy I'm thinking about the beginnings. One little piggy went to market. One little piggy stayed home. One guy made his name in Hollywood. The other one made his name by staying home in Cambridge, Massachusetts. The other guy couldn't wait to get away from home. Couldn't wait to get home. His father's an alcoholic. He was Irish. The other guy was Irish. One couldn't wait to get away. The other one couldn't wait to stay home. He built his whole life under the theory all politics is local. The other guy wanted to be a movie star. He wanted to go into that sort of deliverance world out in Hollywood where you become something almost like a demigod. And he did it in the 30s when it really was the star system. Ronald Reagan couldn't have been different than Tip O'Neill. Tip O'Neill couldn't have been different than Reagan, except they both loved the country. And in their own ways, they wanted it to work. And so I want to talk about these two guys. I was AA to the Speaker, was the greatest, well, it was the toughest job I ever had in my life, working with Tip O'Neill. He was demanding, he was tough. I'll talk about him in a minute too. Question, can we make our government work? Can the two parties find a way to work together, to negotiate, to compromise in the right way, to find a way to deal with our problems instead of kicking that tin can and all those tin cans down the road again and again and again? For a half dozen years in the 1980s, I was in the inside politically, right at the ringside, between two men battling each other over how the country ought to be run. The Speaker of the House, an old-time liberal Democrat, his adversary, Ronald Reagan, destined to be one of the most popular presidents in history. I think I saw American government run the way it was supposed to run back then. For me, a time to remember, the toughest job, as I said, I ever had, and the most memorable. Things got done for the American people in the 1980s, good things for the world, I think. Politics was strong and solid. You could get your hands around it. It was real. The arguments made sense. Government seemed to work, and people felt good about things about the country, including its politics. And I love the story that Ronald Reagan used to talk about the two guys out camping. So there's two guys out camping, and they're in a tent. 3 o'clock in the morning, one guy wakes up because he hears all this noise because the other guy's rustling ahead trying to get his sneakers on. He says, what's up? He said, there's a bear outside. He said, well, you can't outrun a bear. And the guy says, no, but I can outrun you. Okay, so much of politics is zero sum. Somebody the bear catches, somebody doesn't. The bear doesn't catch, okay? It's not all zero sum, though. And if politics were zero sum, we wouldn't be getting anywhere with self-government. If it's all zero sum, you lose, I win, we wouldn't be getting anywhere. It isn't always that way. Sometimes the success of the whole thing depends on a good competition, a balance, and where the fight makes both guys look good. That's what I want to talk about. A fight that's a good fight. The subtitle of my book is called Tip and the Gipper. I'm working on, I'll have it done by next June 1st or I'll be dead. And it's going to be called A Good Fight. Like Roosevelt said, there's nothing I like more than a good fight. And these two guys are sons of Roosevelt. One who turned conservative, one who stayed liberal. But they're both sons of Roosevelt. The 1980s worked because of the way two men, the president especially, I give Reagan most of the credit, decided to make that relationship work. And unlike so many leaders today, they actually tried to get along with each other for the good of the country. I remember the first time I met Ronald Reagan, we used the speaker's, he used the speaker's ceremonial office at 209 up on the hill, the House side, right near the chamber, as the green room whenever he gave the State of the Union. And when the dogs were in there sniffing for bombs, it took about 2 hours, he'd be waiting in there drinking his Perrier or his hot tea or whatever it was that year he was working on for his wonderful voice. And I went in there, and of course, being me, said to him, this is the room where, welcome, Mr. President, to the room where we plot against you. And Reagan in that great voice, oh no, it's after 6. The speaker says we're friends after 6. He really did. I really said it. He really said that. He really had the line down about being friends and not being always adversaries. Well, that was actually the key to it. They had started out during the inauguration. Right after the inauguration, a couple weeks after Reagan got inaugurated, they had a big dinner at the White House with Millie O'Neill and Tip O'Neill and Nancy Reagan. And Nancy shows Millie around the house, and then they sat around drinking for the rest of the night. And they turned out to be pretty friendly. It was kind of stunning to Tip O'Neill. Anybody ever worked with him knows he's a tough guy. And they were trading Irish jokes. You know, everybody here probably knows one or two people that can remember every joke they ever heard. And you can't remember one or two of them. I can remember like 2, and I can't repeat them. And most people, my brother Bruce, Reagan, Tip, they can remember 1,000 jokes. And then once you start, it's a competition, right? I remember Mickey Leland, who's African-American, and this other guy, Gary Ackerman, who's Jewish. I'm in the hotel in Addis Ababa during the famine over there. Of course, we're having fun on one of these Kodels. The congressional delegations, and one guy told Jewish jokes and one guy told black jokes all night long. I, of course, drank listening to it all, and I was in bad shape the next day. These guys were just remembering the jokes. Anyway, so these two guys were telling jokes, and two men, 70 years old, I said, but in great shape. One guy, Reagan, was in great shape. The other pushing 70 and 300 pounds, that was Tip. Both Irish American men have strong convictions about politics. Their differences were obvious, and not just that one was a conservative Republican and the other an old-line New Deal Democrat. Tip O'Neill was one of the toughest politicians ever. He'd been elected the first Democratic speaker ever in the history of Massachusetts, up in Massachusetts, by going around the state recruiting candidates and getting them elected and creating for the first time a majority of Democrats in Massachusetts. He did that. He got in his seat in the House after James Michael Curley and Jack Kennedy and kept it when Bobby Kennedy tried to take it away from him. He made it clear to the Kennedy family, don't mess with me. I can't tell you exactly what the threat was, but it was real. And even the Kennedys pulled back. I think he said, this is going to be the dirtiest campaign you ever saw. It worked. He was the guy who ran the impeachment against Richard Nixon. This is what Nixon said when he knew that Tip O'Neill was calling the shots on Capitol Hill. I knew I was in trouble, Nixon wrote in his memoirs, when I saw that Tip O'Neill was calling the shots up there. That man plays hardball. He doesn't know what softball is. Well, I always say there were 3 parts to Tip O'Neill. A part Santa Claus, who would do anything for you. 1 part Black Irish, look out for that one. And 1 part pure politician. And what an education it was to work with that guy day after day, especially when things weren't going so well, and even the nuns were telling him, be nice to President Reagan. This is what everybody was saying back in the day. Reagan was riding high, Tip was the old-style liberal, and everybody was saying, be nice to the guy. Well, Reagan was a movie star in the 1930s and 40s, who became an even bigger star as host of General Electric Theater in the 1950s and early 60s. He was one of the top-rated shows in the country. 9 o'clock, Bill Clinton grew up watching him. Tip O'Neill grew up watched him. Everybody watched GE Theater. Sunday night at 9 for a half hour, right after Ed Sullivan. And, well, that's when there were 3 channels, by the way, with 20, 30 million people watching each show in those days. Reagan had a huge audience, and people really liked the guy. And I was one of them, of course, and so was Clinton and people like that. What a life he led in those days. I'm told by Ron, who's a friend of mine, who's on hardball all the time. Nancy just told me what it was like to hang out with the Rat Pack, how much fun that was. Nancy, of course, liked Frankie, but she really liked Dino, because Dino was, as she put it, the only guy that would stand up to Frank. Nancy's pretty cool. And Ron Reagan, he would tell me about how it would be like my parents would make you go to bed at night with the pajamas, walk up, but you sneak down to see what's going on downstairs all the time. We would sneak down and see Alfred Hitchcock on television. He would sneak down and see Jack Benny in the living room and Jimmy Stewart. They were the kind of people hanging around the house when he was growing up. And Jimmy Stewart would be in the corner playing the piano. What a life to grow up with. Well, Tip O'Neill was a little less Hollywood, I'd put it lightly. One of the few movies we knew he'd seen over the years was Bridge on the River Kwai. And the reason we knew he had seen 1 movie, he didn't like to go to movies because you couldn't talk in the movies, although some people still do. So he meets Sophia Loren at a White House event one time. So he goes up to her and says, you're a beautiful woman, I understand you're a movie star. And she says, yes. He says, were you in Bridge on the River Kwai? Now, the problem is, there were no women in Bridge on the River Kwai. I think it was a nurse at one point. I don't know if he thought he was the Japanese, the prison guard, or who the hell he was. She must still be wondering, who did he think I was? Anyway, it really happened. The weird thing is that Reagan his best man was William Holden. That's how different these 2 guys. His best man was William Holden when he got married to Nancy, and there's a guy who'd never been to the movies and got all these movies mixed up. Anyway, Reagan had his own set of blind spots. You know, in the morning, Tip would always call him the speaker. I always called him Mr. Speaker. He'd come in. He always had the same approach the morning. He was a real retail guy. He'd come rolling in from Cambridge or the Cape, down the Cape. Somehow you'd go up and end up down the Cape all the time. He's up down the Cape, and he'd say, I was down the Cape. And he'd start every morning with the following. It was Kirk O'Donnell, the chief counselor, Ari Weiss, and me. We'd sit in the room. He'd say, close the door to Leo in the other room, because there wasn't anyone else in the room. And he'd say, what do you hear? That was my first answer I had to give him. What do you hear? That means you had to tell him everything you heard, all the TV shows over the weekend, every scuttlebutt, everything, everybody's out to get him. If you didn't tell him that, he got really mad at you. Who's talking against me in the cloakroom? Who's in there? What's Rusty up to? What's Tony up to? What's everybody up to? Anything special? That was the real killer. If you didn't tell him something special, then you're in real trouble, because that means you're holding out on him. Why do you tell me that? Anything I ought to know? That was the final one he'd go through. Anything I ought to know? This was the vacuum cleaner he did to all 3 of us every morning. And then he'd say to Ari Weiss, the legislative, where are we at? I love that stuff. Well, Tip was like a vacuum cleaner. He'd come in for breakfast at the White House roaring. He'd come back from meeting Reagan, and he always came back with the same complaint. How's that guy just sit there with those 3x5 cards? Does he know anything? Does he just go by the 3x5? He'd always come back with the same hook. That guy, 3x5 cards. What's the matter with that guy? And then he turns the meeting over to Cap Weinberg or somebody else, or Haig. How come he's not an expert? Well, Reagan was a little short in the Washington department, to be honest with you. We all loved it when Reagan went to a White House reception for mayors from across the country. And he bumps into a guy who's African-American. He says, nice to meet you, Mr. Mayor. And the guy says, I'm your secretary of HUD. Little oversight there. But if Reagan, in all honesty, didn't know the people in his own cabinet, he could talk to any guy in the world when he got on television. He's one of those people like Johnny Carson in the old days. He lived in the electrons. He didn't exist in the room. He existed on TV. And when you got him on TV, he could talk to that guy working on the factory line in Milwaukee. Still there. He somehow could connect magically with the working guy, the Reagan Democrat out there. It's an amazing ability. All those years in Hollywood, and he still had that gift. And if he didn't know the details of government, he knew why he was there, to cut taxes, to cut the size of government, and to beat the communists. And every cab driver in Washington knew those things about Reagan. He was the perfect communicator, the great communicator, not because everybody knew the details. He didn't know the details. But everybody knew why he was in office. And that is a great ability to convey. Lincoln was to save the Union. Churchill was to save the empire. Roosevelt was for the forgotten man. If you don't know why a politician is there, they shouldn't be there. Motive is everything. And everybody knew Ronald Reagan's motive. And Tip knew it. He fought it, but he knew it. And that's why it worked. People loved to start, and the assassination was an amazing moment for all of us. Almost assassination down here at the, at the Hilton Hotel. And of course, Jodie Foster, this guy, John Hinckley, who's still at St. Elizabeth's, wanted to somehow win the love of Jodie Foster, the movie star. He was obviously mentally problematic there. So Reagan gets shot, and Reagan gets through it in a way that just blew everybody's mind. Because he really is. The bullet went right here, it traveled right to the heart. He lost half his blood. When he got into the hospital, George Washington University Hospital, he really faked it. He had adrenaline, so he could still walk in. But the minute he got in the hospital, he just collapsed. And it was really close. And so he really came back a hero. It was almost like Lazarus coming back when he gave his speech in the House floor. I was there. And when he came back, he was unbeatable. The country rallied to him. They'd seen a president almost killed, and he had stood through it and shown great charm. He would say things he'd say to Nancy when he first met her, "Honey, I forgot to duck." I think that was Dempsey talking about the Tunney fight, by the way. But it worked, and and the doctors are about to operate him, and they get the bullet out. He said, "I hope you're all Republicans." So we love that stuff. It's very cinematic. And one reason it works so well between him and Tip, and I want to tell you about their story because I've got Reagan's diary to work from and Tip's background. I was with Tip to see it. They made a point of being social friends. And when the Reagans came to town, they didn't come with an attitude, as we say in Philly. They didn't come for trouble. They came, we're going to discuss, we're going to argue, we're going to win the arguments, but we're not making any enemies here. This is going to work, this thing. Nancy Reagan decided it. They made friends with Kay Graham at the Post, George Will. They met a lot of friends. They went around, made the rounds with Tip, and they wanted to make it work because the way you make things work is make friends with the other person. Then you can negotiate a lot more easily than if you come in with a growl. And I think that's important. Also, you come in with the idea that you're actually going to make it work because you believe in the other person's position. 2 reasons why these guys worked. 3, actually. They respected the will of the American people. When they saw an election result, they said, that matters. I'm not going to ignore it. I'm not going to go over in my corner and act like the fight wasn't won. They won the fight. We're going to govern accordingly. I'm going to aver to their opinion because they won the election. The people should be respected. Number 2, they respected each other's office. Tip always said the President of the United States. He always said it the same way, the President of the United States. And the other guy called him the Speaker. And the only time they got into problems personally is when they didn't respect each other's office. And 3, they wanted to get something done. They didn't come to Washington to posture or to give out press releases or to give speeches. They didn't come here to do those things. They came here to get things done for the country. They wanted results. I think everybody comes here should take that oath. I respect the electorate. I respect other people's positions here. They were elected too, and I want to get something done here. I'm not here to issue press releases or show off. I remember one of the, so from the beginning they had these birthday parties, and Tip would always be invited to the birthday parties for Reagan, and they had parties, dinners together, and St. Patrick's Day parties all the year, birthday parties every year for both, and they always got together and had some fun in the midst of all this. By the way, in fact, one time they invited Sam Donaldson. It was on TV, this part, and they're giving out birthday cake, and Sam Donaldson, who was the best reporter back then, and he said, Mr. President, you don't think you can buy us with a piece of cake? And Reagan said, oh, Sam, you've been bought for a lot less than that. That's how I knew the guy was sharp. He would do these things. Catch these entries in the Reagan diary then about these 2 guys and how they managed to get along over the role of the federal government and the role the United States should play in the world, the 2 biggest questions of our lives. What's the proper role of the federal government? What's the proper role of the United States in the world? And that argument's been going on since Hamilton and Jefferson, and it will always go on. Those are the legitimate, best arguments about America. What should the government be doing here? And what should we be doing in the world? We'll never stop arguing those. That's the great American debate, the great tension. Here's a February 81. Here's after they had dinner together. The Reagans, the O'Neills. Reagan. It was a nice evening, but maybe Tip and I told too many Irish stories. The next day after a meeting on the Soviet grain embargo, Tip had the last word, and it was a good one. He told me I was president. I had to think of all the states. The gist was lifting the embargo, good for the United States and our security vis-a-vis the Soviets. Here's one from April. I'm having more luck with demos than Republicans. Asked Tip O'Neill if I could address a joint session next week. He agreed. In June, here comes the fight. Tip is blustery on the phone and accused me of not understanding the Constitution, separation of powers, etc. He's trying to gut our program because he believes in big government. Later that year, it's Tip's birthday. We had a good time telling stories, Irish stories. That lunch with Tip lasted till 3 in the afternoon. I know somebody there. In '82, Tip still thinks I'm depriving the needy. Told the press I associated with the country club crowd. He plays golf and I don't. I called Tip O'Neill. I'm not sure he's ready to give. Tip's truly a New Deal liberal. He honestly believes that we're promoting welfare for the rich. January '83, they're back at war. Tip and I got into a real Donnybrook. I really had my dander up. The worst of it is that Tip doesn't have the facts of what was in the budget. Besides, he doesn't listen. Sounds like they're married. Here's one, March 17, 1983. Tip's a real pal, a true pal. He can really like you personally and be a friend while politically trying to beat your head in. It's true. Here's Tip on Reagan about the same time. Away from politics, he's a real chama. Well, they argued, but they were always able to talk, and they were, more importantly, they had things that were important to talk together about. And here's the difference. When Reagan came in wanting to push tax cuts and changes in the budget, Tip refused to play any games. There were no filibusters, no efforts to jam things up, no obstacle course set up. Tip figured Reagan had won the election, he had the votes, it was his turn at bat. In Reagan's second year, he came to the rescue, Tip did, when he could have left him hanging. He's the guy to help them pass TEFRA, the bill that effectively offset the excesses of the first-year tax cut. Tip O'Neill this is Reagan's diary. Tip O'Neill made a speech to Republicans telling them why they should support me. It seems strange, both of us on the same side. In Reagan's third year, Tip and Reagan both got together and did the bipartisan solution to Social Security. They saved the system, working together. In '86, they agreed on a major tax reform that kept the top rate down at 33%. They did all that together. Also, when we went into Lebanon, I didn't agree with it, but Tip backed Reagan up on that. They did a lot of things together. There were a lot of times when Tip backed Reagan up when he didn't really have to do it. When Reagan sent troops to Lebanon, as I said, took tremendous heat from his own party for backing him. And he stayed with them far longer than it was good for him politically. On the takeover of Grenada, he sent me down to Grenada to keep the people like Ron Delms on the Democratic left quiet and not cause any trouble right after the invasion. Tip could see no matter what he said publicly that Reagan had won the respect from the Soviets. He understood what was coming at the end of the Cold War. His buddy Dwayne Andrews of Archer Daniels Midland had come back from a business trip to Moscow saying that when Reagan fired the wildcatting air traffic controllers, that sent a message to the communist bosses that they could understand. This guy was different, and Tip got the word on that early. Before Reagan met with Gorbachev, Tip and Republican leader Bob Michael led a congressional delegation over there. Before they headed off, Reagan gave them a note to take over to Gorbachev. And he said in his diary, I just wanted to give them a last-minute briefing on our blessing. I gave them both. Actually, when Tip met with Gorbachev, the first guy to meet with him, and delivered the note from Reagan, Reagan thought he was working for Gorbachev thought he was working for Reagan. And so Tip had to explain, no, I'm leader of the opposition. And Gorbachev says, what's that? So they spent 3 hours and 40 minutes explaining what an opposition was to Gorbachev. Tip's greatest line, which I'm going to make a top, you know what he answered? What's an opposition? That means we don't disagree on everything, which is America. We don't disagree on everything. When it came time for Tip to retire, Reagan spoke at his goodbye party, a big fundraiser for his alma mater at BC. Remember Boston College? It's one of those other schools. That's a nice location, Boston. Mr. Speaker, I'm grateful to you that you have permitted me in the past, and I hope in the future that singular honor, the honor of calling you my friend. Well, 2 days later, they were back at it again. Quote, this is also in the diary, Tip O'Neill has mustered a gang of his favorite toadies in the House to hold a press conference demanding that I cancel today's nuclear test in New Mexico. I said a flat no. This is how they did this thing. The thing I miss in those days is the big man-to-man arguments on matters of policy and principle, the role of the federal government in our lives and in the market, and the role this country should play in the world. Again, the big questions. Reagan thought government was the problem. Tip believed that Social Security had removed the fear millions of us have of old age, that the GI Bill had built the American middle class. And you get a different view of things, in all honesty, when your job is representing the old neighborhoods like Tip did. He's always meeting people with problems, hearing people's problems day after day, year after year, like he did for 50 years. Tip won 50 straight elections and primaries. And whether people agreed with O'Neill, when he retired, one major poll had him with a 67% job approval. That was the Harris poll. Pretty good for the Speaker of the House these days. Anyway, if there's a message here, it's something my old pal Kirk O'Donnell, who's the chief, he said he died way too young. He was the Speaker's general counsel and chief political guy. He said, always be able to talk. There's a rule for life. Always be able to talk with your friends and your enemies. Long after Tip and Reagan were gone, Max Friedersdorf, who was the head of congressional relations, told a great story about the Tip and the Reagan relationship. It's about what happened after Reagan was shot, what happened in a hospital. Well, it's an amazing story. Reagan was really hurt badly for that wound that got right to his heart. But he was in good shape, and Tip used to say, if I had a fist fight, I would have lost for the Democrats. This guy was in shape. But it took about 3 days before he could actually see anybody. And Strom Thurmond was a little weird. He snuck in to see him. And Nancy Reagan got very upset about how, of all people, Strom Thurmond snuck in to see her husband at George Washington Hospital. So they decided, because Jim Baker was a great chief of staff to the president, he said, well, let's do this by protocol. The first person to see him should be the leader of the opposition, the Speaker of the House, who's second in line to the presidency. So let's do this right. So they let him in. And Petersdorf, I've got a long, it'll be in the book, a long letter about exactly what happened. But what happened was they went into the hospital room. It was like the scene from The Godfather. The hospital's all shut down and locked down. And Tip comes in the room, and he nods or waves to Friedersdorf. And he walks over to Reagan. He gets down on his knees. He holds Reagan's both hands, kisses him on the forehead. And then they recite the 23rd Psalm together. So that's our system at its best. I really think that in politics, you have to understand the humanity of the other person, even if you argue with them all the time. And you have to understand they're both in the same world and the same purpose, which is to make the country work. And the great thing about that relationship was, maybe because they're both Irish, maybe that was part of it. Maybe because they're both Christian, maybe that was part of it. But they're both basically American. And the fact that they were able to work together and solve so many problems. We did immigration reform, we did tax reform, we did all those good things. We saved the Social Security system for 30 or 40 years. They were able to offset the excesses of Reagan. Tip was actually Reagan's best friend because he offset all the excesses of Reagan, all the cutting of programs that shouldn't have been cut as much, and the taxes that shouldn't have been cut as much. He pushed them back. In a way, that's the way our system works. One party works with the other to make the system better. Unfortunately, today, so much of politics is how you can stymie the other party. Don't make them look good. Don't let them do something that works. Put the logjam in front of them. Use the obstacles. Use filibusters. Use all kinds of tricks so they can't get anything done. So then you can win a scorched earth policy. And I think that's wrong. And I don't know how you stop it. All I can do is offer up a model of how it works when it should work. And I do think that we're going to remember these two fellows for the way they work together. It's not just going to be Reagan. It's going to be these two guys. Because in a sense, the left and the right fighting in America the right way, having a good fight, and actually being concerned about compromise in the end and making it work in the end. And the three rules again: respect the electorate. When Tip saw that Reagan had won that election, he didn't get in his way. And when Reagan saw he lost by 26 seats in '82, he knew he had to fix Social Security the Democratic way. And he took Tip on the backyard of the South lawn of the White House and said, I got a deal. And they put it together. And they did the same thing with Ron Stankowski getting through the tax reform bill, and with Simpson and Mazzoli getting through the immigration bill. Bills got passed, things got done. And I think that's the great era of getting things done in our country, the 1980s, especially the 6 years Tip and Reagan were at each other. And as I said, I'm never going to forget the hospital scene, because in the end, it shows their common humanity. Anyway, I want to take your questions now. It's the best story I've ever come up with in politics. I hope you like it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, first of all, thank you so much for coming and speaking. So in the summer of 2011, I served as a page in the House. So I like to say I literally had a front row seat to government at its worst.
Who were you working for? Who was your
it's Leader Pelosi.
Okay.
And
is she quitting this year?
Fortunately not. I actually just voted for her.
Do you know if she's going to run for election as minority leader? I'm asking. What do you know? Come on, tell me something I don't know. I'm just curious. Open question. Do you know?
I couldn't tell you.
Why not? You just told me you had the inside on this whole thing.
A minority leader? Yeah, I'm pretty sure she's.
She will run again.
Yeah, I mean, there's like inter-party drama going on, but.
Well, of course there is. Steny wants it.
Yeah. Anyway. My question is, considering all that, so after like that whole debt ceiling debate fiasco, I kind of came up with a theory similar to you that like the major problem with our government today is the people that are running it.
What do you think happened with the $800 billion and the 1.2 that the president went for? Did he reach too far? Did he blow a good deal? Or is it Boehner's fault he couldn't deliver on Cantor because you can't trust Cantor?
Well, in short, I'll try to tie it to my actual question, but I think that it was part the personalities that were involved, and it was also part the system. And what I mean by that is I think considering some of the undemocratic natures of our system, such as the Senate, where you have effectively 11% of the country being able to block 90% of the country's will because of the filibuster in the small states.
Yeah, the filibuster is way overused. And the one thing that Romney, it's a little asymmetric. If Romney wins, if he only wants to get rid of stuff like cut taxes, cuts programs, get rid of starve health care, he can do it through reconciliation, I think, with 50 votes. So all he needs is pick up 3, win the election, get the vice presidency in there, and he can do anything he wants. Whereas the Democrats, they want to do things, and they may have a little hard time using reconciliation. In fact, they don't have both houses, but it looks like the House will stay Republican, and the Senate is right there. It's right there. But if it goes to 50, then the Republicans can rule the country completely. So it creates a different situation than we have now.
Right. So.
Hi, Elizabeth. My niece. Sorry. Catherine, hi. Hi, Sherry.
So, is the problem of American government...
No, the problem is I want a question that I can understand. A real simple question.
All right,
a real simple question.
Is the problem of American government the people that are running it or the system itself?
Well, we've had this system for 200, 300 years. I mean since it really got going here. First election for Congress was, I think, 1788. Look, I think it's worked. I mean, we have a system that works. We have elections every 2 years. The voters, we've never missed an election. We don't have the 5th republic like in France. We got the first one we started with. It all works. The public has to demand compromise. The voters have to not vote for people that don't want to compromise. It's as simple as that. Voters pick these people, you know?
Thank you.
I mean, it's not just Tea Party people. You got 180 liberals out there that are still waiting for deliverance or something. They're waiting for it. It's not going to happen. The people around the Bay Area are not normal. All right? I mean, they're just not.
I just have to say I'm a proud citizen of San Francisco.
And the people who live in Boston are not normal. These people, they got to stop waiting for, New York, Chicago, Boston, San Francisco to rule the world. It's not going to happen. There's a lot bigger country out there.
That would be a good world, in my opinion.
Okay, well, it's location. Yes, sir.
I grew up in Boston, so I agree with that. Regarding specifically the filibuster, because you mentioned it has been overused, it's been used a record amount of times, smashing the previous records. Agreed that the system does work, but could it use some tweaking? Could we reform the Senate, maybe lower the limit for what a supermajority
Well,
is
if you
required?
made it 55, would it really change? I don't know. I think about those. It came down from 2/3 to 60. It had been much more unreachable. I'm trying to think through. You want it there, or it would be just like the House. Do you want it there for really historically important issues like health care? When you're really going to change Americans' life? Maybe it should take a supermajority. It really depends on compromise. I mean, we had 3 Republicans really join the Democrats on that, right? I mean,
yeah.
On some of the
Arlen
stuff.
Specter changed parties, so.
It changed later. But you're right. And on stimulus, they got 3 more. I don't think stimulus should have required 60. There's an example. It's fiscal policy. It's always being adjusted. Why do you need a supermajority? As they said, reconciliation can do it with 50 on a lot of these things. So reconciliation is a good process, by the way. It gets us down to 50 and it makes it workable on fiscal issues.
It lets us reconcile.
Yes. Aren't you metaphysical? Yes. Good use of words. You're done.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're next. We got to get through this line here tonight.
Hi, my name is Alyssa. I actually work at the library for all these people down here.
Okay.
But my question is, you're really focusing on these specific people, Reagan and Tip O'Neill, as the leaders of this bipartisan movement. But who today in our political world do you see leading that for us? Compromisers.
I mean, not that I support him overall, but a guy like Hoyer's a deal maker. Boehner's a deal maker. He's a nervous deal maker. He's a deal maker. He wants to deal. He looks like a regular Republican from the old days. They come to Washington, they're more conservative than Democrats on spending and taxes, but they're not from a different planet than the Democrats. No, really, it's not existential. It's just they have a more conservative view, like Jerry Ford or Bob Dole or any of the Republicans I grew up with, the ones from Pennsylvania, like Hugh Scott and Jack Javits from New York. And it used to be that all the northeastern states had at least 1 Republican senator. They all did. Clifford Case in New Jersey, and you go right through all the states. New York had Keating and and Javits, and Connecticut had one of the Bushes, and Massachusetts had Saltonstall, and all the upper New England states had Republican senators. They were all moderates. Right now, we're left with Susan Collins. Olympia Snowe just quit.
Do you think it's possible?
I mean, they're just going away. Now, I have to say, it's harder to. We had Southern Democrats who were conservative. We had Frank Lausche, one of the rare Northern conservative Democrats from Ohio. But there were people that were. You have Bobby Casey now, who's pro-life, and that separates him, not on other issues. And he's fighting for his life right now against a self-financer.
But do you think it'll be possible to find that compromise without the moderates?
People have to vote for him. New York is. You have to realize that. I was going through the old films. Kennedy and Nixon fought over New York State to the last day. You understand? New York was in play. Think about how different that was. New York State was a swing state. In fact, a lot of the states were swing states that aren't today. Now you got about, the same old 7 states. It's always in Iowa. It's always Virginia. It's Florida. It's Ohio. And if you don't live there, you don't matter. I haven't had a vote that mattered in years. I lived in the district. I live in Maryland. I know what's going to happen. I do vote.
You're in Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania's going to matter. It's close enough to matter up there. That one may be a shocker if it goes the other way.
Better not. I work for the campaign.
Where do you grow up? Where'd you grow up in Pennsylvania?
Just outside of Philly, Kennett Square.
Oh, yeah. I've got a cousin from there. My 2 cousins live there. Thank you.
Thank you.
What do you think's the most rewarding part of the speechwriting process?
I loved flying on Air Force One. I loved it. Win or lose, it's great. You know, you get back and you get your table. We used to be able to smoke, which we shouldn't do anymore, of course, but you'd smoke and you'd sit there with your pack of cigarettes. You'd be peanuts and candy, and then you're getting back around summertime, you smell the steak cooking. It was great. And you're going to be there all day, take care of you. You stay at nice hotels. And you're writing speeches on, we used to write them on old Selectric 2s. And the plane would be taken off because Air Force One, the little plane, flew right up, 45 degrees. So you'd be typing like this. It was great. And you know that your words would be the next speech. The President of the United States was going to read your words. It was the greatest, most fun job I ever had. Not the toughest. It was not tough. I loved it. Because you write jokes, a little harder for Carter, but you know. Imagine him at 5 o'clock in the morning deciding what's funny. Oh, God. He wasn't the funniest guy. But we literally liked him. And to fly around the country and to see the country, we flew, last day we lost, we flew right across the country to the Midwest, all the way to Spokane and not Spokane, we stopped in Portland and Seattle, and then we flew back to Plains and voted down there. And, you know, we'd stop it all with people like John Glenn to do it in Ohio, and it was great. Then you go down to Texas and do 5 cities in Texas. All of the President of the United States, you go out and see the crowds, and it's the greatest job in the world. If you can get it, you know. A Holy Cross guy's got it now, though. John Favreau. He gave the baccalaureate speech when I got my commencement. I gave him a commencement speech up there. He looked good then. He was good. He's a smart guy. No, it's a great job. I came back from the Peace Corps wanting that job. It took me 10 years to get it, and it was a lot of good fortune to get it. But I always wanted to be a speaker. I wanted to be Ted Sorensen. You know, that's who I wanted to be. That was my dream.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I want to thank you for coming. My grandfather was a Reagan Democrat, so I'm sure he would love to read your book when it is released.
Thanks.
So recently you made some news when you said that the far right's #1 enemy is President Obama and not Al-Qaeda.
Yeah.
And then you went on to suggest that race might be a part of what's going on
What
in
do
the
you
country.
think? What do you think?
So, well, I don't know. That's why.
No, you can't say you don't know. Because you raised the question. What do you
Right.
think?
Well, I will say is that you just made a great case for why the Speaker of the House and the President should be of the same race. So I want to know if...
What do you mean the same race?
Well, you said Tip O'Neill and Reagan were both Irish. So
Yeah?
that's when government worked. So maybe...
No, that is the...
Maybe...
Get out of here. You're hopeless. Let's get the next question. You're hopeless.
I just want to
You're
say...
hopeless because you can't set up something I didn't say as a premise to a question.
But
take that back and we'll talk.
Okay, I take it back.
All right.
What I'm saying is, are we in danger of oversimplifying the
No, let me tell you one
reasons
thing.
of partisanship?
Excuse me. Donald Trump is playing the race card every day. He's from Kenya, over and over again. He's from Kenya, he's from Kenya, he's from Kenya. He accused me the other day of monkeying around with the unemployment numbers. Excuse me. Food stamp president, welfare without work to play to his base is what Romney says. It never stops. It's always the son of the guy running out there in Wisconsin says, the president will go back to Kenya the other day. It never stops. It's a drip, drip, drip. Maybe it's they're playing to the Yahoos, whoever they're playing with. This guy, Romney, never says stop. Just stop. He could go up there to these guys. How about Sununu, who's going for ambassador to the Vatican? I don't know what he's up to. Sununu's saying, this guy doesn't know how to be an American. Over and over again he says this stuff. You don't have to listen to the dog whistle. There's a bugle call. And you hear it, and I hear it, because it's addressed to me. I'm a white guy. I know who it's addressed to. And what bugs me is white people that don't hear it and blow the whistle and say, stop it. And you know who did stop it? You know who did stop it? John McCain. And that woman said he's an Arab. Nothing wrong with being an Arab, but it wasn't meant to be a nice thing. And he said, no, that's not true. That was a profound courage. That's a great man.
Thank you. Thank you. My name's Jordan Cox. I'm a graduate student in the Department of Government here. I watch your show often. I'm a huge fan.
It's on every night. You can watch it more often.
You often talk about that politics are more divisive today than they have been since the
Civil
War.
They're not conclusive. It's not that they yell at each other. It's that they don't ever say, okay, we've done the yelling, now let's do something. Like I keep looking at immigration. 10 regular people of all different ethnic groups could get together and they could figure out the immigration thing. It's not complicated. A little enforcement, a little liberalization, and let's be realistic about it. We're not going to send somebody home who's been here 10 years. Stop the stupid talk.
I agree.
But I just think this, but the politicians all, one works for the restaurant business, and one wants the votes, and one wants something else, and everybody wants the issue. Today, so many politicians just want the issue. They don't want the resolution because they don't have the issue anymore, right?
Right. Well, my question is, do you ever see a trajectory?
How about a victory? That would be good.
That would be very decisive.
Yeah.
Do you ever see politics being on a trajectory to being less divisive?
Well, I think it's how people vote. I think here's the problem, and it's somebody raised the systemic question. It's a good question. If you're from Utah and you're a senator, I used to work for politicians out there. Wayne Owens was a great guy, and Frank Moss was my first boss. A Mormon, liberal, both these guys. And if you're a conservative guy, say you're Robert Bennett or you're Orrin Hatch, you cannot lose to a moderate. So you can only lose to a younger person to your right. So your pressure while you're in office is always stay on the right and just stay there. If you're from Harlem and you're Charlie Rangel, the only guy you're afraid of a woman is somebody 20 years younger than you who's to your left, more militant. And so you can't lose if you go to the extremes in America today. Nobody ever gets beaten for being an extremist anymore. You get beaten because somebody more militant than you runs against you. And so the system's built that way. Some of it's gerrymandering, but some of it's just geography. It's just the way it is. And so there's no incentive to say, I'm a moderate. I think we ought to deal. Now, there's one case of Scott Brown up in Massachusetts. He's trying to do that. We'll see what happens to him. But it's very hard to find a state where it's in your interest. And that's probably because they're so excited about even the possibility of having a Republican from Massachusetts that they're willing to give them all kinds of slack on the Republican side. But most Republicans insist on pretty conservative voting record where you're considered a traitor, a rhino. You're a rhino if you're not a Republican in name only, if you're not right-wing. And the liberals, you wouldn't believe the number of big city liberals that have 100% ADA rating. All of them, 100%. They don't want to miss on one point. So where are you going to get your moderates? Where are you going to get your deal makers? That's the problem.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sir, I have to begin by saying what you said to James Lipton the other night on Hardball. It's an honor just to hear your words. That really applies to you, no one else. I've been watching Hardball ever since I was a young lad in high school, seeing you take on Zell Miller until last night, all these years. I've been watching Hardball every day. It's an honor to finally see you in person and not on the TV. My question, sir, I got...
Your internship is locked in.
A year ago, when you had the episode about Jack Kennedy, Elusive Hero, right away I said, where's my bookstore? Where's Barnes & Noble's? I'm first in line. I've had that great book. And my question, sir, is about that great man who's a hero to you and to me and to many Americans. I was wondering, in all that you know about this great man, Jack Kennedy, I wanted to know a couple of things, 3 questions I really had about him.
Right.
First of all, I remember in one episode you talked about how Jack Kennedy, he's the guy, if you're in high school, if you like politics, he's the one who's your hero. And you're right, that's exactly true. Everyone looks up to him. So I was wondering, what is it about him? Why is he the one who's our hero for everyone who's interested in public service? Secondly, regarding people who criticize him, how can people who are fans of Jack Kennedy, like us, how can we respond to those who say that, oh, he wasn't strong enough on civil rights, or, oh, he tried to go right-wing for the '64 election, he was sort of a lightweight? How can you respond to that? And finally, do you think that the fact that he saved the world from nuclear destruction during the Cuban Missile Crisis, is that enough to put him on the same level as FDR or Lincoln? And
okay, well, let me get to the heart of it. Well, Lincoln, I don't think he's Lincoln, and FDR, I don't think he's FDR. But he did do a lot of things that, as you mentioned, I don't know anybody else with the right temperament or acuity to have gotten us through the Cuban Missile Crisis once it started. Because he had to do something that was so hard to do. He had Curtis LeMay right there, and he had people like Dean Acheson and people around him that just wanted to go and hit the missiles. And when you go back, as you read my book, Khrushchev said if I had 2 missiles left, I was going to hit New York. And of course, that was insane because there's no way the United States would let him do that without a total exchange of nuclear weapons and kill 70 million on both sides. And it was going to happen. It was that close. People at college, my brother Herb was up a year ahead of me at Holy Cross. The confession lines were incredibly long. Everybody really thought, no, you laugh, it was real. And everybody at this school would be in confession too. It was real business, that nuclear potential. We were going to go to war, and everybody, ask anybody who was around, it was the business, and it was the everything. And I think that he saw through consequences. He did find a way to a deal with the Soviets over Turkey. He kept it secret because it wouldn't have sold, but I think he had to do it. He had to give Khrushchev a chance to back out with his own hawks. It cost Khrushchev his position, of course, you know. I pushed him that far. That's as far as you can push anybody. Thank God we had Khrushchev over there, not a nut. And I think it comes down to, it's as simple as this. A great person is somebody you want to follow. A leader has to have followers. But sometimes I worry about the president. He's a soloist. He doesn't have troops, Confederates. A leader isn't a soloist. A leader is somebody who has other people follow him into battle, man or woman. Hillary is a leader. People want to follow you into battle. That's the instinct. That's a leader. And I think Kennedy was that guy. He was that as a PT boat commander. When his ship or his boat was cut in half and he saved those guys, they all signed up again for his next boat. That's a leader. Because he wouldn't even let them go home until he got all those guys home. Word like that gets around. And so I find myself in my life, and I didn't grow up as a liberal. I grew up in a Republican family and pretty Goldwaterite in many ways. But I always wanted to meet Kennedy. I found him the most interesting guy in politics. And I wanted to do what he did. You know what I mean? I liked the idea of what he did. Like every time I read, there's about 3 names. I will read anything about if I come across, and everybody here has those names. They're different names. I will read anything about Churchill. I see the name, I'll read it. I see anything about Kennedy, I'll read it. I see anything about Hemingway, I'll read it. It's not so much Hemingway's a great writer. Sometimes he's great insights, but then other times not. But you always want to know what he did. What was he doing in Africa? What was he doing in Paris after the war? You know, what was he doing in Cuba? I'm fascinated by that. So that's what I call a leader, somebody you want to be like and follow. So it's more wondrous than your question. Thank you.
Not as wondrous as you. Thank you very much.
We got to go. I can't meet the demands.
One more question. And then
Why don't you all agree, all of you, on one question?
okay.
Who wants to do it? Ladies first. How about that? Ladies first. 2 ladies. Come forward. Oh, there's 3 ladies. Quickly. How about a real question, not a life story?
Okay, this will be fast. So in the, I think it was around February, during the Republican primary debates, Mitt Romney said something along the lines of, I've only ever voted for a Republican anytime there's a Republican on the ballot. And this was taken kind of as a good thing to brag about. Do you think that this was sort of just political rhetoric, or is this actually representative of sort of Americans turning a blind eye to policy?
I don't think that's true. I think he voted for Tsongas.
This is what he said.
Yeah, I think
don't know
it was for
if it was
Tsongas
true.
and others base. No, I don't think anybody should vote straight party.
Okay.
It's just, you got to look at the ballot. I used to do things like vote for the Irish people, getting back to that. I stopped that stupid habit. It is the stupidest habit in the world. I got rid of it. I said, I'm not going to, if I don't know who they are, I'm not voting. You know, I got to at least see the lawn sign. I love it when they come door to door. I want to have some reason to vote for the person besides familiarity, but most of us vote for the familiar name, honestly, or we vote the way our parents voted. That's the normal way we vote. but I'm getting close to it. One last question. The answer is you should think through the vote. I mean, obviously, you should think. You know? I voted for Michael Steele for senator. You know why? It's an embarrassment to this country to have no African Americans in the United States Senate. As simple as that. It's an embarrassment. It's just embarrassing to white people, the way we vote. It's tribal. You know, it's tribal. It's voting race. I mean, there's no excuse for it. We should have more black senators. And it's a fact. And I voted for a guy I thought was a pretty good guy. And he's a Republican, more conservative than me, but damn it, it's got to start somewhere. I don't want to be disrespectful. That's so true, though. Doesn't it drive you crazy? Look at the Senate. It's just this, whatever. Sir.
Oh, my question. Okay. Sorry. Hi. Okay, in 2008, the young voter population was an important factor for the election of Obama. Do you believe, well, for this year's election, what do you think that or for Obama's campaign, what they can do to
They're working like mad to warn people how just the latest stat is at 537, how just 500 votes can decide an election. They really have to, I know it sounds paternalistic or whatever. I don't think a lot of younger people realize what it's like to have really different kinds of presidents. There's a real range of presidents we can have. And they have different opinions about all kinds of issues, women's issues, war and peace, race, civil rights. There's a tremendous range. You can never say it doesn't matter who wins. And I think that's the hard thing to get in your head when you're young because you've only seen a couple presidents. But I've seen a lot of them, and it matters who's president. And that Supreme Court we have today is a function of all those presidents. And if you care about any issues, I don't know how you can say it doesn't matter. If everybody here votes, Obama will win probably. But I don't know. If all my 3 kids vote, I keep saying. Although one's for Gary Johnson, I think. I don't know. They're so far out. Anyway, thank you very much. I'm getting pushed off the stage. Thank you.
I want to thank Chris Matthews. It's been a wonderful evening, and I really want to thank the smart Georgetown students with their smart questions. Thank you all.